Hello, everybody. Welcome to What's Next for MSPs. All right, everybody, let's be honest. You didn't tune into another boring chat. Fear not, we have assembled a panel of industry heavyweights who are guaranteed to keep you on your toes. We've got Aharon Chernin, CEO of Rewst, who's probably automating something while we speak. Chris Day, who's managed more tech companies than most people have browser tabs open. And of course, the man who needs no introduction, Austin McChord, the tech wizard behind, well, everything. Let's see if we can break the internet today. Gents, I'd love for you to give a brief introduction of yourself and something you love about working with managed service providers. Hey, Mr. Chris, why don't you kick us off first?
Yeah, so I guess for me, what do I love about working with MSPs? I think probably the fact of my DNA is MSP. So as much of things have changed, a lot of things haven't changed since I started my first MSP in '02. So yeah, I just love that many of the same challenges are still there, and tons of opportunity to fix a lot of things that are not quite fixed yet.
Thank you, Chris. Austin.
I think the fact that MSPs are business owners too, and that it's that business to business relationship, is really great. And like, basically, MSPs taught me everything I know about business. And so, like, continuing to work with them and continuing to learn and continuing to take that input, helps me operate and run better businesses.
Well said. Aaron?
Um, so my background is working in the enterprise, doing cybersecurity for like large banks and stuff. And what I like about MSPs is they're real people. And you're building products that provide value to real people. And MSPs buy things because it provides them value. Large enterprises, they buy things because of internal politics. They buy things because someone took them out to a sports ball game and put them in a box seat. And so no matter how good of a product you make, it doesn't mean you will succeed when you're targeting large businesses.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Gentlemen, you have accomplished a ton in your career. I am curious, what is one thing each of you are still striving for, something that you have not accomplished yet, that you really want to?
Hmm. Who wants to go
Who,
first?
who are you asking first?
Austin, do you want to go first?
I think in many ways, like post Datto, it feels like I'm kind of living life in like the bonus mode where you already get to like the end of the video game and they're like, guess what? You get to go back and start all over again. And I think that uh for me, thinking a lot about like, was the success of Datto, was it luck or skill? And so in order to prove that, like I've got to build something that's as big or bigger again from scratch. And that's been the process and got my hands dirty in a whole bunch of different stuff. But I think that answering that question of luck or skill is probably like the next decade of my life.
Thank you. Aaron?
You know what I'm still striving for? You have I exited Perch Security, and you would think when you start a new business that once you've got an exit, you've got more time on your hands. And what I'm striving for is work-life balance. I've got, if everything, if you have a problem in the company, I'm stressing about business in the company 24/7. And if the company is perfect and there's no um, problem at the company, then I'm stressing about how, my customers and whether they're successful and how good their business is 24/7. So it's like I can't, as a founder, ever turn off worry mode.
Hmm, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, for me, I think I would answer that as maybe similar to Austin. Like it's I was fortunate to sort of create a category, and I think at the time when documentation came to life, it was sort of something that we didn't even think was a category. And so I think for me, to be able to bring another category, that's an obvious thing that has been ignored for so long. And I guess, yeah, kind of prove, is it luck or skill? Or some combination thereof. I think for me, that's probably what's most interesting.
A lot of us humbly have a lot of respect for what you all have created, and appreciate the insights in how humbly you speak about where you are and the things that you think about. And it's very accessible to us. So thank you for being so vulnerable about that. Let's jump right in. I'm really interested as we think about our industry and our business. Best in breed. Is it a myth, right? Or is the future about the platform? What do you guys think about this topic? Austin, I want to hand it over to you first.
Sure. I mean, I think the answer all comes down to the quality of the integration. And so what we're seeing now is that a lot of the platforms stopped integration at like SSO. And it's just like, oh, you can use one account to log into all these things. And that's not enough. And you can see it in tools like Rewst are a great example showing like how much integration matters and how much having all these tools interact with each other. And I think that best in breed is enabled actually by products like Rewst, and that it makes it easier for things to come together. Or like one of the Chris Day tools of like Backup Radar, again, allows people to pick best in breed, but still have a single pane of glass to manage a whole bunch of backup systems. And so I think best in breed is seeing a comeback because MSPs want to tailor the technologies to match the needs of their clients. And that's the whole point why the clients hire them, is to be that virtual CIO to help find the pieces that make the most sense. And the large platforms have come together and they've decided like, look, we can glom all these things together and then try to charge the lowest price. But they're pushing people towards delivering an undifferentiated product. And I think that in order for MSPs to be successful, they need to deliver a differentiated product, and that's what best of breed enables.
Thank you. Chris, Aaron, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm going to chime in on what Austin just said. I do have to say, Austin's team reached out to the Rewst team very early in their product development for a backup solution, and was asking us about what types of APIs needed for their product to become best of breed for automation, because we need good APIs to automate things. As far as what is best of breed, I believe that to be subjective, right? An MSP defines what is best of breed to them. And then for companies like mine, my job is to then support automating on top of whatever product the MSP selects. Now, I would say, 90% of what the MSP has about 90% chance of selecting best of breed, but there's always that small 5 to 10% of outliers that an MSP may define as best of breed, but the product doesn't have good APIs into it. And so it's not something that can be automated, as part of a larger automation. And even if an MSP today is not interested in automating today, you may be interested in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and then you built your business around a product that won't scale with you.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, my mind goes, I think, really unpacking what is a platform. I think, if we're saying in the financial sense, I think that's most of what we've seen today, like a lot of M&A under one logo. And I think, I don't believe that we've seen a true platform like an AWS of the MSP space yet. I believe there's an opportunity for something like that to appear, but I think to Aaron and Austin's point, it has to be built in such a way that it's it's open, like not the marketing open, but open, legitimately open, so that, you know, to speak about ScalePad as an example, we may have 6 products, but if one of those products doesn't fit the needs of an MSP, it doesn't feel right to force that to be the selection just because, you know, they're using 5 other products from ScalePad. So I think we want, you know, kind of believe that each product should stand on its own 2 legs. And but if it's not good enough or there's different requirements, then it should be open enough that the rest of the platform can be usable, which I
Got it.
think is completely different than what we currently see.
I want to go a little bit deeper because I'm hearing a theme here. Aaron, you said you were talking about trusting the MSP. Austin, you were talking about clients hiring partners to be the CIO, right? Again, there's an element of trust. How is it that the MSP, right? What's the decision-making criteria that MSPs must go through in order to choose the right partners in order to be able to perform correctly for their clients? Like how does that relate to the best of breed mentality?
I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And partners are ultimately picking tools. And hopefully when they pick those vendors, the vendors are aligned in like building tools to empower those partners to serve small businesses. And seeking that alignment, I always think is most important. And it was actually early on in Datto's history, the founder of StorageCraft like said something to me that like has always resonated with me. And he said like the best part about business is you get to pick who you do business with. And like that idea that they're making a decision and deciding like, hey, who am I working with on this? Who is my partner in this? Is so important and is a really a mentality that I think matters a lot. And I think it's what enables MSPs to go far is when they work with vendors that really understand what the word partner means, and believe it and get it, versus, you know, vendors that are seeking to extract some of an MSP's margin.
Aaron, you, your business has a connective tissue to so many other technology companies. How many? Do you
Over 80.
over eight? Okay. Right. So you're constantly thinking about how you relate to other technologies and then what that experience is like for MSPs and clients, right? So how do you, what's the framework you use to ensure that, you know, that sort of that best of breed mentality, it, you know, makes sense for partners?
I guess for us, it's to remain vendor and product neutral. Like if you decide to change your PSA, if you decide to change your RMM, or your backup solutions, your automations should still work, right? As long as it's something that's integrated into Rewst already, right? So some folks will use automation as a way to lock you in to their platform, versus with Rewst, it's, you know, your automations free you, because if you decide to change products, they could still work. Um, Another thought to be thinking about, because I'm seeing more and more out there, is that Roost, we want you to decide what you think is best of breed instead of the CEO of a large company telling you what is best of breed, and it's to buy all of their products because they're the best at integrating their products together. um, that's not reality. Like I run into very few MSP owners that only buy from one solutions provider out there. MSPs need flexibility, and that is what we're doing.
Yep. Good. I was hoping you would hit on the democratization side of this. At Cork, we have 76 integrations, and it's all API agentless. And it's the same mentality of we trust the MSP to be able to choose their stack and to make those best decisions. And we support that. And we're, agnostic in that decision-making criteria. And I love that freedom of choice in that mentality. Okay. I'm curious, kind of switching topic here for a moment. I want to get blunt for a second. Can the MSP space fail? And if it did, what would the root cause be?
Yes. And the root cause would be that they don't deliver a better product than a national provider.
Hmm.
And like that people will just get their IT services from Google or somebody. And that they're delivering, something that's undifferentiated and uninteresting, and that like that would be the reason that they fail.
It may be something that can never imagine or plan for either. Like if you look at the shopping mall in the 80s, like that was the place. There was no better place to be than the shopping mall. Now, the shopping malls are empty, closing, and it's the last place we want to be. No one could have predicted in the 80s that there'd be this thing called the internet that shut them down. So there could actually be dangers out there to the market that none of us can even imagine or thinking about.
Hmm.
Yeah, back when Microsoft launched their first cloud offering called BPOS at that time, and MSPs were making a bunch of money selling Exchange servers and deploying Exchange servers. I think at that time we thought, maybe that would be the end. There's going to be nothing else to manage. It's all going to be provided by Google or Microsoft, and certainly those fears were out there in the market. I think part of the reason why the adoption of that stuff was relatively slow. I think it's, if anything, that the industry has proven to be pretty resilient, and I think the requirements of SMBs are continuing to skyrocket, and so somebody's got to be there to guide that 60% of the GDP through the next chapter on an ongoing and continual basis. I agree there could be something, but I mean, even if I think of like what's that thing, Microsoft Intune, that was going to be the death of RMM, and we certainly haven't seen that make any kind of an impact. In fact, the RMM companies are growing just as much. I mean, there hasn't been a change there. So, yeah, and I don't know. I think economically, certainly that's always something people ask me about is the economy going to be a big factor? I've been through 2 or 3 of those through the MSP lens, and haven't seen that. In fact, I've seen moments of economic uncertainty create growth as well, where SMBs and mid-market start to outsource more, and the businesses actually grow. So I think there are blips along the way, but I don't really see anything right now that's like a massive threat that I can predict.
Yeah. You guys have witnessed quite a few things over the decades. If we flip it around, what trends should MSPs bet on versus which ones are just hype?
I think increasing software diversity by the customers that they serve, and that a lot of the AI tools are going to enable small teams to build big products, and there are going to be a lot of new niche SaaS products. And so there, was a world where everybody uses Salesforce and everybody uses HubSpot, and there's like a few big tools. And I think that world is about to get super fractured, and that all these people are going to build tools that are very specific for, could be a plumbing supply house or this or that, but like these niche verticals, you're going to see lots and lots and lots of new tools show up. And I think lots and lots of new software is going to be written because the burden and barrier of entry to write software has come way down. And how MSPs help their end businesses and interact with their end customers in adopting and thinking about all those new tools is going to be a very important role that they're going to need to serve, and is going to be a huge tailwind for MSPs that get it and help their clients find the tools that are really good fits for them.
Is that the evolution of where MSPs are going to exist, right? Like being able to think about what those tools are and then manage those tools on behalf of the
I
client?
mean, that's their job today. It's just a case of like the rate of new tool arrival is going to increase exponentially. And so, you know, a new CRM doesn't come along that often. A new accounting package or ticketing package or, you know, some other piece of like workflow software doesn't come along that often. But I think that like we're sitting at a point in time where there's like a generational rewrite where like almost all the SaaS software that people are using now is going to change or like will look completely different in the next 3 to 5 years.
Aaron, Chris?
Yeah, we're all gonna have our different takes because we're all vendors that are building products that we think are next generation for MSPs. But I feel like you can't ignore automation for too long as an MSP, because we're already seeing this today where automated MSPs are going after clients of manual MSPs and not even saying that they're automated. They're simply asking, hey, for these services that your current MSP provides, what's the SLA around it? And then, they come back with their hour, days, weeks SLAs, and they go, great, well, we can beat those by, 90% faster, 95% faster. Also, I believe automation like brings MSPing and turns it into like a state-of-the-art industry. You see folks today preferring to maybe call an engineer directly at an MSP. And so I see that as a problem. Like with all these tools that MSPs use today to provide value to their customers, why do their customers still want to call the engineer directly to get stuff done? I think there's a value problem there. When their customer needs a car, they open up the Uber app. When their customer needs toilet paper, they open up the Amazon app. When they're doing research, they bring up their browser and go to Google. When they need something done immediately by their MSP, they call the tech directly. So we got to figure that out and what that issue is in the market.
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing that hasn't changed, like if you're an MSP and you charge a customer $10,000 a month for X, Y, and Z, and that has been, let's just say like 80 to 90% of that was, sweeping up the leaves or doing basic tech support in the past. I think for me, looking at the opportunity, it's like, I don't, what if I could charge that same amount, but provide a much higher value consultative service that's higher margin and, is stickier and the customer loves me more. And I think that's always been the thing. I think that's what we're seeing now is the rise of MSPs that, as an example, just do GRC or compliance as a service. And they're able to command similar seat price to what might otherwise, just be very basic tech support. And so like to be able to bring those conversations out to the SMB and whether that's automation or that's, AI initiatives or whether that's productivity opportunities that we can bring to SMBs. I think those are that was always the dream, is like, can we flip this from a less like highly commoditized to a less commoditized consultative trusted advisor type relationship, and not have to reduce our revenue, and in fact increase our margins at the same time.
One of the threads that I'm hearing from each of you is essentially simplifying process, simplifying communication in order to save time in delivering the value more quickly, right? All MSPs, all of our partners on the call, right? Time is the enemy. Wasting the time is so frustrating. What are each of you doing in your own businesses to try to give time back to partners so that they can be more client facing?
I mean, I think at Slide, like speed is everything. And
Right?
so it's a faster product. It's a better interface, which means you spend less time interacting with it. The setup is easier, which means you spend less time. Like every part of the product is optimized around saving MSP's time. And it's the same thing, with like delivering a more reliable product, like should save MSP's time. And so time is the thing that like you know, an MSP wants to multiplex the most in order to drive the best revenue proposition. And so if we can reduce the time overhead to manage our slice of the world, that's a huge win for MSPs and pays dividends for them, every month into the future.
Aaron or Chris, any comment on the time factor?
Um, that's our job, is to give time back to MSPs. I guess one of the things that we do is we allow for accurate measurement of that time. And then, putting that front and center so how much time you've been given back. But really, what we should also be thinking about, every vendor is not just the, say, executive time or even resource time. There's another way to think about this too, which is scaling optionality for the MSP. When you give the MSP time, when more work comes around, they get to decide, do they use this free time for that more work, or they need to hire, or am I going to need to hire to do that, more work? And so by giving people free time, you're giving them another option to scale their business, other than just always hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's all about time. I think if I think back, documentation was one of those examples that was really a big time burn that was happening within MSPs. We estimate that time spent kind of researching and looking for information, that went down by like 50% as a result of that. And so that was a big win. There are many other things in the MSP business that are equally inefficient with time. One of the ones that is pretty obvious if you talk to MSPs is how much time it takes to deliver customer success at scale, to make sure that a customer has everything they need at the time when they need it, and that your team has the time to put that together and put it in front of a customer in a way that they can say yes. So that's one example of an area where we're talking about, um, 4 to 10 hours per customer per quarter, if it's a QBR, that's going into that, and should that not be like 7 minutes? And so like that's another example of where that's going. The other thing that we talked about a lot, when I was running the MSP and since, is the time, the passing on of waste with time. And so as much as it's costly for the MSP to be burning time and not be able to get around to all the value added things that they want to do, who's who's being punished by inefficiency at the MSP is ultimately the customer, the SMB. Like if they're spending 4 hours working on an issue with somebody, that should take 5 minutes, that affected the SMB's business more than it did, even more potentially than it did the MSP. So I think that's the other consideration, is like being considerate of the last mile and making sure that, to Aaron's point, like the Uber experience that we're used to, or Venmo, or whatever, how do we get it like that from the consumer of MSP services? I think that's a big gap, a huge gap. If you subscribe, today as a user of Uber and a user of an MSP service, there's a lot of room to make improvements there.
Mhm. I want to use that as a segue to move over to partner obsession, customer obsession. There are different models that we use for building our businesses, and I want to understand how you focus on things like product-led growth, community-led growth, in order to build the right things for your partners and ultimately, the customers or clients. What is the framework that you use? Aaron, I saw an interesting interview with you as you were talking about the importance of community. I want to start with you, please.
Yeah, we're definitely a community-led growth company. We if you think about building software, really the only challenge there is, can you hire software developers and pay them? And are you able to give nuggets of data to a developer instead of giving them the grand vision so you never actually see a product? There's something more difficult than that, and that's building a community. It's almost impossible, right? You can go out and say buy software that looks and works exactly like LinkedIn, but no one's going to use it because there's no people there, and it'll be virtually impossible to get people there. And so when we're thinking about starting a company like Rewst, we put just as much dedication to the community as we do to the software product. And that's why today we have approximately 3,500 people that are all MSPs in the Rewst Discord, helping each other, answering each other's questions, giving each other ideas. It's really cool to see this MSP to MSP interaction. We also provide support through private channels in Discord. And so instead of just opening a ticket, and then, waiting, hours, days, or whatever, like you just drop a question in your Discord channel, and sometime shortly thereafter, someone's going to come back and interact with you real time, from our support team to help you. We also have calls every Friday with the same community, and every single customer is invited. And it should be such a liberating thing for MSPs, because imagine if all of your vendors had every one of their customers on a call together every week, and how honest and open it would make that vendor be. Because if there's, even 5% angry customers, they would take over the call. And so I think community is a big deal. And now that we see the rise of software startups where the entire product was built by AI, that's the one thing that AI can't replace. And that's the community that uses the product.
Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Austin, you've built some really interesting companies, and obviously you co-founded Cork. So I've spent a fair amount of time with you, and nearly 100% of the interactions, you are always forceful with me and the team about partner impact and partner insights and what we're doing on that side of the community and the partner side. I'm curious, as you reflect on Datto days and what you're doing today, you know, what framework are you using these days to build product, leverage community, leverage the insights everything that you're taking in order to build Slide?
I mean, I think first and foremost is use the product every day, break the product, and interact with it. And like everything that we're always building, like feels not good enough. And knowing that we can do better and keep pushing to do better is important. Uh, I think thinking about things that will delight MSPs or that really highlight your alignment with them are important. And I think that showing some vulnerability in the product is helpful. And what that means is much the same way that like Aharon talks about, like, hey, um, there's a there's a case, he has this weekly phone call and like, if all his MSPs were unhappy, like it would be a mess. Like I think about in Cork's case, the fact that you get the credit card digits right away and like you're able to get money and get on your way to like resolving your disaster right away shows like again that tremendous amount of trust. And sure, MSPs could take advantage of it, but you're saying, no, I trust you, that you're not going to take advantage of that. And so looking for those pieces and components in the product, adding that so that the alignment with the MSP is not just what we say, but is also what we do, is so important. And I just try to reinforce that at like all the companies that I'm with around sort of demonstrating that alignment with the customer.
Thanks. Chris, what are some of your lessons learned?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting and quite humbling. I think, over the last couple of years, the amount of time that our team, like on the product side, spends with customers, partners, MSPs, uh, as opposed to where it was like back in the day where you're trying to walk this line of like we know better and partners, it's so innovative that MSPs would never have an idea how to build this new thing that we're building. And it's been humbling to see just how profound the impact can be of having those conversations like pretty early, like napkin mock-ups or crappy Miros or things that we would show well in advance of even getting to high fidelity mock-ups. And so that's been humbling for me because I thought I had all the answers because of course I came from the MSP space. And then you get out there and realize that there's folks doing things like way better than I could have even imagined in any particular area of the business. So getting that like super direct feedback, like our product managers are mostly spending time with partners now. And if I went back like 8 years ago, it was like mostly just like working on like internally working away and like we'll launch that thing when it's ready. So I think that kind of building out loud has become a lot more popular and it's vibey for me as well to just see how smart the industry has become. And the ideas are all out there. Just have to ask.
Yep. A lot of vendors talk about being partner first, and we hear it all the time. Our partners say we prove it through giving them confidence because we pay, right? We pay in the warranty. We show them through the Insights platform every day. We put the skin in the game. How do you build real trust with partners so that they see you as an ally, like as a true partner, and not just as another vendor? Right? Like what are those things that you do day in, day out to make sure that it's a partnership, not just a you know, tech relationship?
And I think you have to give trust to get trust. And so any way that you can demonstrate that, being available online, being available on LinkedIn, being available on Discord, being there, and showing that you're a human, and like happy and excited to interact with people is huge. Um, I think the same thing with the product, and speaking around sort of that alignment component. And both like, Aharon and Chris's product sets like show that alignment so much. So it's easy for this group. But I think that, there are other vendors out there where, everything charges an extra dollar, or like, oh, we're going to show ads at the login screen, or we're going to do different things like that just show like misalignment between who their customer is and misalignment between them and the partners. And I think that that's what MSP should be looking for is like, are these vendors aligned with me? And are they seeking to sort of enrich my experience, enrich my business, and help me grow? Or are they just, trying to skim some off the top here?
I
Thank you.
see. I see. The way I do it is by interacting with the community and showing our customers that there's no job beneath me, whether that job's customer success, whether that's talking about the tech, or getting involved with the sales team. Like showing the client that the CEO of the SaaS company that they do business with is exactly like them. The MSP owner operator is doing the same thing. They're not too good for any part of their business, and neither am I.
Yeah. One of the I did a 4.5 year stint at AWS. And in the last year and a half, one of the biggest frustrations that I had is I was violating my best practice, which is that every week I want to be spending 8 to 10 hours with customers, with partners on sales calls, on tickets, working tickets, right? On the floor with partners, like everywhere that I can possibly be listening and learning what's happening in the business. And I couldn't do that in that particular role. And in, our businesses, we can actually do that. So I agree with you, Aaron. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, I think just to that point, I think well, I measure it, but I believe it's right around 60% of my time that I spend uh, not working inside of ScalePad now. I'd love that to be even more, but that's where I get the most value, and I think that's where our partners get the most value. I think we kind of we became at risk of acting like some of the, I guess, in quotes, platform guys that are out there when ended up with 6 products. And just as just as an example of how focused we are on success with a product, we had to change our whole mindset. Like if someone is not fully adopted and engaged and getting value from a product, like we can't have another one. Like we're not interested in doing a cross sell if the value is not there on something that you're supposed to be getting value from, them that you're not. So I think that's a mindset that has to trickle all the way through the entire company, because if that's not true, then you end up trying to become a sales led engine, long contracts, bundling, things that maybe are a lot less interesting from a MSP's perspective. And I think from our perspective, like driving value to the SMB ultimately, that's not the way to do that. So yeah, I don't know if that is an interesting answer. That's kind of how we think about things.
Got it. Got 2 more questions. We recently had our partner advisory council, and I need to ask these, and then we'll open it up to our attendees as well. A lot of MSPs want to shift from legacy tech, but they're stuck in the day-to-day. What's the lever that breaks that inertia? Right? How do you get away from that legacy tech and into the newer, better software that actually creates the right solutions for clients? Any thoughts on that, guys?
I mean, I think MSPs are naturally curious. Like, very few people who start MSPs or get involved with MSPs aren't like tech people at heart. And so they always want to play with something new, try something new. The key is really just sort of figuring out, like, does this actually work for what I need it to do? And can this automate and save my time? And again, like going back to like where Aaron puts his time and energy around sort of that automation component, like that should be essential in all these different tools that they're playing with. Open APIs, like, will this play well with all the other things that I have going on? And then, how will this help me run my business are all kind of like the questions that they should ask. Um, I, I think like MSPs are pretty good at that, and like that natural innate curiosity differentiates them from enterprise, where, again, like they'll buy stuff because you took them to a baseball game. And instead, like they're tech people at heart. And so MSPs want to play with this stuff.
Thank you.
Um,
Chris? Aaron?
Aaron, you go ahead.
Uh, it's a good question. You know, how do you get out of the grind? And how do you change? Uh, when we're talking to MSPs that have never automated before, and sorry, I keep focusing on automation because that's my business, right? And everybody has their business and that they focus on 24/7, right? But when we talk to new MSPs, the automation space, you know, every now and then we get the MSP that says, "Well, I don't have time to automate." And my response is, you know what takes more time than automating? You know, not automating. So it's really to get out of the grind and to modernize and change. It takes at least two people. It takes the owner or some level of executive that says, you know what? You know, I want to change this business and give me more options than just hiring. And it takes an engineer or tech or help desk person to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to assist the owner, operator, CEO, whoever, in automating the business. And when then those two people align, beautiful, beautiful things happen within the MSP.
Hmm.
Yes.
Got it.
I'll take a little different angle just for what it's worth. You know, one of the things that we recognize that's happened in SaaS over the last 10 years. So software companies, recurring software companies have really put a focus on customer success. And that's not a set of tasks. It's not a QBR. It's an entire program. It's how do you manage customers after they sign up for a managed services agreement, all the way to you know, if they eventually churn. And that process slash program is really immature in the MSP space. And so, you know, simple concepts like segmentation and understanding an SMB's appetite for mature solutions, and then applying a playbook on how you address customers in different segments. Those things are not really being done really well at scale. And I think it's not, you know, we can certainly have a product that would help, like, you know, Gainsight does it for SaaS. But Gainsight is useless if you don't have a methodology behind it. You haven't decided, like, how are we going to handle, we've got 100 customers. How are we going to build success for these customers at scale? And what does each one of those segments require from us? And how do we organize our team and align them behind the activities that are needed to drive that? And the MSP business is way more complicated than SaaS, because in SaaS, the service is the software, and for an MSP, the service is the humans. And so there's a lot more variability in the delivery that can happen. And so it's that much harder to manage, you know, what is the VCIO, account manager, customer success person, technical account manager, service desk manager. There's all these different roles. And then sort of like, how do you address how do you address 100 customers with that? So I think that's one of the biggest opportunities we have, is to mature that process to make it easy for MSPs to handle all sizes and maturities of customers in the right way.
You trying to solve for that in 2025?
Yes.
I love it. It's an important thing to solve for. All right. Last question. What is the real role of distributors and marketplaces in the modern MSP ecosystem? Are they accelerants or bottlenecks? You guys have
I
an
want to
opinion?
hear Austin's answer to this one.
Can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, you bet. The real role of distributors and marketplaces in the modern MSP ecosystem. It's a lot of shift in this one.
I have a personal bias in a negative fashion towards distributors, probably on average. I think that they ask for a big slice of the pie, and in exchange I think that what they deliver for MSPs is sometimes relatively small. Um, I prefer that direct relationship that I have with the MSP, and that it's business owner to business owner. That, you know, this idea that the people who are using and interacting with my product are abstracted away from me in a way where I cannot really contact them, I cannot interact with them. It's harder for me to do the things of being a great partner, of maybe I need to give them free service because we've made a mistake, or a discount, or do something else to try to make something right when we were wrong. Having another hand in that relationship adds friction to those things. And so my preference is to try to keep those relationships direct, because the relationship is a big part of the community, is a big part of what all that means. And so while distributors can, help companies get a lot of reach very quickly, it comes at a cost, and it comes at a dilution to the relationship. And that's not something that I take lightly. And so, uh, that's kind of where my bias comes from.
I still hear a strong desire for you to deliver results to your partners and have that relationship with your partners. That's what I hear the intent in all
Yeah,
of
I
it.
mean, I like having the relationship with the partners, and I
Yeah,
like being able to like
yeah,
interacting and have that connection,
yeah.
and having somebody sit in the middle of that connection makes it hard.
It's a reasonable love of yours. Yeah. It's been your first love, I think.
Like I said, like I've learned a lot from the partners, and like that's basically where I learned how to run a business.
Yeah.
And I remember going to HTGs and getting the like, where do you get to sit in the room? And like people were talking about like, multi-million dollars a year in revenue. And I was like, oh man, someday my company might be that big, and I'm gonna like learn from this. And like it's basically where I learned how to read a P&L, was like watching other people's HTG conversations, because like I had no idea. Um, and yeah, like that direct relationship with the MSPs is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Word. Chris, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's sort of like there are some things that are great for distribution, and I think if it's like the way it always was, like that sort of makes a lot of sense. A lot of availability and scale and warehousing and things like that. I know that the modern, I guess, cloud marketplace or cloud distributors get a lot of love, and so I think there's aspects of it that are cool, um but likewise, I mean, if we're delivering a solution that helps with customer success at scale, and we don't have the relationship, everything I talked about as far as, spending 80% of my time in front of partners is going to be much more difficult. And then what's the real value? Is it just simplified billing? Because like we could probably sort that out as well and make it really easy. So I think it really depends. Like there are a bunch of things that make sense to go through that model, and maybe there are a bunch of things that don't. And so, I mean, we haven't put a lot of I haven't put any of our companies into those marketplaces yet. Doesn't mean we wouldn't for uh, the right thing, but probably not all of it.
Understood. Very fair. Thank you, Chris. Aaron, any thoughts on the subject?
Instead of my opinion on distributors, I want the MSPs to be thinking, um, are you losing anything by going through a distributor? And are you losing any flexibility with the relationship of the product vendor that the distributor is buying from? A lot of folks may not realize that there's some flexibility that could be lost. But marketplaces, big fan of marketplaces because of community building. If you are the marketplace and all the MSPs are on there and they're rating and reviewing the products that they love, it's a great um, accelerant for the marketplace and the vendors out there that are in the marketplace. The one word of caution I have about marketplaces is marketplace is not a software problem. And I feel like we keep going at it like, can we build the best marketplace? Um, I like to look for patterns in our lives. Like if you look at the consumer, when does a consumer use a marketplace? Well, a consumer is forced to use a marketplace because their iPhone forces them to do it, or their Android forces them to use the Google Play Store, right? And if you look at like JP Morgan, Bank of America, large financial institution, what marketplace do they use? Well, if they use AWS, well, AWS forces them to use their marketplace. What is the pattern where we've seen optional to use marketplaces succeed? That's the pattern, and the pattern can be broken. Like it can be fixed. This is 100% certain it can be, but the problem is not the software. The problem is trying to figure out that challenge. And if you can, it will be a beautiful, beautiful thing for the community.
Said, and back to the community. To all the attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in. In the meantime, I'm going to use the Wayback Machine. I'm going to go to DattoCon 2018, Austin, Texas. Austin, I believe you asked Richard Bronson the question, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? I'm going to ask each of you guys the question as we wrap up. What would be your superpower? Chris, oh, Austin, all right. You seem ready with your
Sorry.
superpower.
Oh, I think the point of view gun from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and to immediately be able to share your thinking or point of view with someone else and have them understand it, would probably free up the vast majority of my day. So, yeah, that would be my superpower of choice.
Point of view gun. Got it. Chris?
Geez, hadn't thought about that. It would have to be just a prediction and predicting the future. I would say ability to kind of jump forward in time and just quickly take a look.
Yeah. I mean, that would be scary though, because that would then mean that the entire universe is deterministic, and like that makes life a lot less interesting.
True.
Because you would, if you
Could be
could
one
accurately
version.
predict the future, then it's not clear you could change it. Right? Because you would run into like, this statement is false.
Just by
Problem.
seeing it, it changes it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
In which case, then the future prediction would be of no value.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron.
Man, like time travel. Like I'd be more interested in going back to 2010 and picking up some of that Bitcoin for free, actually. I mean, in 2010, we had like Bitcoin faucets that were just giving you a Bitcoin every day when you went to go visit the faucet.
There you go. Yeah, mine was time, being able to pause, accelerate, travel. Time is always fascinating to me. All right, gentlemen, I really appreciate you spending so much time. This has been really good, illuminating, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the time that you've got. So thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody for
Thank
joining.
you.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Bye.